Good morning. I'm Parampreet Singh. Welcome to the Meditation Questions podcast, part of the Immersion Meditation Network. Meditation without gods, reincarnation, afterlife, or the supernatural. If you'd like to support us, please visit meditationquestions.com. Does meditation change your brain? If we research this question online, we're going to come across headlines like, meditation actually changes your brain, or meditation literally changes your brain, or meditation rewires your brain. Now, are these headlines overblown hype, or are they true? Well, the answer is yes, they are true. They are not overblown hype. But here's the thing. Everything changes your brain. Every single thing that we do changes our brain. Right now, I'm talking. My brain is being changed by the words I'm saying, the thoughts I'm thinking. Right now, you're listening to a podcast. Your brain is being changed by the words you are hearing. When we're walking, our brain is being changed. When we're chewing gum, our brain is being changed and rewired. And you can pretty much guess that both walking and chewing gum at the same time is changing our brain. What's more, not only is our brain changed by anything we do, our brain is changed by not doing anything at all. A great comparison is to think about our muscles. Anything we do changes our muscles. And we can think of the brain loosely as a muscle. I remember there was a time when tennis players, this was back in the 80s, because they used their racket arm more than their other arm, that arm used to be like this huge, bulging, muscular thing. And their other arm seemed to be more of an ordinary arm, the kind of arm I might have. But now, of course, all athletes know they have to work all parts of their body equally well to balance out everything and make themselves a better athlete. We can think about the legs of a sprinter. They're like powerful, toned, muscular trunks because that's the body part they work out the most. On the other hand, we can think of ourselves as we're sitting on the couch watching these athletes do their amazing physical feats. While we sit there, you know what? Both of our muscles are being changed. The athletes' muscles are being changed in that moment, and our muscles are being changed. Granted, our muscles are getting a little mushy. The athletes' muscles are getting stronger. Nevertheless, we're both changing our muscles. Similarly, both meditating and not meditating is changing or rewiring our brain. That's guaranteed. So the idea of meditation rewiring or changing our brain, it's not a big deal. That's going to happen regardless, whether we meditate or not. A better way to ask the question is, does meditation change the brain for the better? Does meditation make us better mentally, emotionally, and physically? In the last episode, we saw the answer to this question is yes. There are many mental and emotional benefits to meditation. To summarize, meditation can reduce anxiety and depression. It can help in increasing focus, in increasing attention, and it can also help in reducing stress and managing pain. The big question is, are those benefits changing the brain, or are the brain changes leading to these benefits? It's mostly a back and forth thing. Definitely a meditation habit leads to brain changes, which reinforce the habit, which leads to more brain changes, and a positive reinforcing feedback loop or cycle is created. Meditation does rewire and change the brain for the better. But for how long? Does the brain just pop back to its original state once we stop meditating? Is it like a balloon where if we're holding a fully inflated balloon and we take one finger and press on a part of it, it indents the balloon at the end of where our finger is, but once we release our finger, the balloon pops back into its original shape. This analogy is appropriate because as contemplative, philosophical meditators, I'm sure we occasionally get accused of being full of hot air. So the balloon comparison is a good comparison in that regard. Fortunately, what's happening in the brain is not like a balloon full of hot air. The effects of meditation can be long-lasting. And to understand this, we need to understand the difference between states and traits. This difference in these terms, states and traits, is made in an excellent book titled Altered Traits by Richard Davidson and Daniel Goleman. The subtitle of this book is Science Reveals How Meditation Changes Your Mind, Brain, and Body. And I'll put a link to this book in the show notes. Richard Davidson has been a pioneer in meditation research. His lab is at the University of Wisconsin, and he's been at the forefront of brain research in relation to meditation for decades. What he and Daniel Goleman discuss in this book is often when we're meditating, we'll have this, let's call it a bliss moment or an awareness moment or a deep relaxation or connection experience. That in itself alone is a state. Just like we might talk about being in a state of confusion or state of anxiety or state of panic, we can equally talk about, meditation put me into a state of bliss or a state of connection or a state of deep relaxation. These kinds of states, they're good. They're desirable. We want these. But we don't want to just be experiencing these states while we're meditating, while we're on the meditation cushion. We want to carry them forward to the rest of our life. We want to be able to cultivate these states on a regular basis. We want these states to become traits. We want to cultivate them as a regular way of being. Earlier, we talked about thinking of the brain loosely as a muscle. Just like with athletes, when they train a particular motion enough, they develop something called muscle memory. They don't even have to think about that motion. It just happens automatically, whether that's swinging a bat or a racket or catching or kicking a ball in a particular way. Their body knows what to do. They have developed that muscle memory trait. And that's what we're going for in our minds and hearts. We're trying to inculcate these benefits of meditation as traits. It turns out meditation does change particular parts of our brains for the better in a permanent way. I'm going to name these parts of the brain. You don't need to know them, just like you don't need to know the parts of an engine to drive a car. We don't need to know the areas of the brain to experience their benefits. They're interesting and helpful, but not necessary. The only time we really need to know the mechanics of the brain is when something might be going wrong. Just like in our car, if it stops shifting gears properly, then we have to know that there's a transmission problem. So unless someone is having neurological issues, we don't need to remember the brain areas I'm about to talk about. Just note what they're responsible for. Regular meditation leads to long-lasting brain changes in the left hippocampus. What happens there is learning. Our ability to learn is enhanced with meditation. Also affected is the posterior cingulate. That's responsible for wandering thoughts. What happens with meditation? We're able to better corral wandering thoughts, and that's why we achieve the benefits of focus and attention. Meditation also changes the pons, and the pons area of our brain is responsible for sleep, for facial expressions, for processing sensory input, and basic physical functioning. Meditation strengthens the pon, allowing us to have more control over these behaviors. Meditation also changes the temporoparietal junction, also known as the TPJ, and that area is responsible for empathy and compassion, which makes sense when we're doing empathy or kindness meditations. That area is strengthened. One area that gets smaller with meditation is the amygdala. And the amygdala is an attention announcer. Whenever something requires attention, it's involved in alerting us. And that's why it's also involved in feelings of anxiety and fear and general stress. The conjecture is the reduction in size of the amygdala is why we have fewer of these feelings and experiences. Those are the brain areas and what they do, what they're responsible for. As mentioned earlier, everything is a feedback loop. As those brain areas change, our habits change, which in turn changes those brain areas even more. But a big caveat to keep in mind is nothing in the brain works on its own. Everything works at the same time together. Going back to the car analogy, everything is connected to each other in a car. The steering, the pedals, the pistons in the engine, the axles connected to the engine, they all work as one harmonious whole to produce motion in the car. Similarly, everything in the brain works as one harmonious whole to produce thinking and feeling and doing. And fortunately for us, regular meditation helps alter the brain to develop long-lasting traits that can help us get to wherever we want to go, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support Meditation Questions, visit meditationquestions.com.